So our first question for this group, what barriers do you have to development? And I guess we'll just start on the end and go down the line here.
Hello?
All right, we got you now.
Perfect. So I guess my name is Austin Cameron. I own a company called VIP Marinas. We own one marina here in Oklahoma, out of 9 marinas total. But the marina we own here in Oklahoma is called Pier 51. It's on Keystone Lake, acquired it about 4 years ago. I guess my biggest barrier to development with Pier 51 specifically was the term of the lease. What we run into, or when I purchased the marina, because the lease term that I have with the state has to mirror that of the Corps, I was limited to only being able to put about a 12-year note on the marina, which if you have a 12-year note versus a 20 or 25-year note, obviously higher bank payment, which reduces your cash flow, where you'll be able to spend more capital on it. And the problem I ran into was that, well, I was like, well, let's talk to the Corps about extending that lease, but since I'm not the one on the lease with the Corps, I was relying on the state to negotiate a lease with the Corps, and then I'm negotiating with the state. And ultimately, it was going to be a problem. I bought it knowing that hopefully we'll fix it in the future, but not being able to talk to the Corps direct has been problematic, and getting a longer lease, which prevents me from putting more money into the marina, which then prevents the state park from being as nice, so on and so forth.
And the communication issue can compound that.
Exactly, yeah, for sure.
Chris Keaton, I somehow became the president of the Harbor Reserves over here. It's a housing addition over here. And ditto, I think. Our biggest issue in the development has been dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers, without a doubt. The lease we had a dock and it was leased to CETA. Well, that Skytook Economic Development Authority, and then it was subleased to the Harbor Reserves, which Ron ran, and then we maintained it. But we couldn't talk to the Army Corps of Engineers. They wouldn't. In fact, I called them one time, and the person I talked to, won't say any names, our lease is not with you. It's not with Ron Howe. Our lease is with CETA. And she hung up on me, just flat hung up on me. And I'm thinking they are a publicly funded entity, the Army Corps of Engineers. Tax dollars pays their wages. I think I'm a customer of my employees. If I had a customer that talked to if I had an employee that talked to one of my customers the way she talked to me, they would not be an employee of mine anymore. So yeah, that's the deal we have. The communication is non-existent.
Same question once again. What barriers do you have to development?
My name is Ross Garrett. I'm managing partner of Beavers Bend Marina and a few other marinas in other states. I can't really say much more than what they've said. It's without question, the Corps of Engineers is the most difficult agency I've personally ever dealt with as far as a federal level. We've had, I'm a little bit lucky. We have a local Corps guy and we can talk to him, and I've got a good relationship with him. But as far as getting things done, and I'll give you a quick example, we got several 1-star Google review ratings because our boat ramp has holes in it. I've complained about that boat ramp having holes in it for at least 5 years, It's never been fixed yet. I've been told we can't touch it, which we haven't, but it never gets fixed, but we get the bad rating for it. I was saying something earlier today on tape for Ron Howell that I'm a big Ronald Reagan, President Reagan guy, and I'm probably older than I look. I better be. And he said the 8 most dangerous words in the English language are, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. And he's 100% right. Back in 1980, that was a big problem, and I remember 1980, I was in college. It's a serious problem. It's not supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be the other way around. They're supposed to be public servants working with us, trying to make things productive and successful, not trying to create roadblock after roadblock after roadblock.
Hi, my name's Seth Erkenbeck. I'm probably a little different than most people up here. I run a one-day event in Tulsa called the Great Raft Race, so we're not doing any type of long-term development. For just real quick, for who doesn't know what the raft race is, it was a huge event in the 70s and 80s where people float down the river from Sand Springs to Tulsa, and it actually broke the single-day attendance record for the largest single-day event in Oklahoma history with attendance of over 100,000 people. Me and a couple other people restarted it in 2015. And the biggest roadblock for us is there's been no consistency in how we can get water in the Arkansas River from Keystone Lake. The raft race, we just had our 5th year on Labor Day, and we've acquired water from the lake 3 different ways. We've gotten water donated from a water storage owner, and then we've purchased electricity, and the electricity has been given to SWAPA for the amount of the water gets dropped. So there's just no consistency in being able to grow an event and increase tourism. It just, the roadblocks, the way forward is really tough. And we've also been told now that we can't even get recreation deviations for water out of Keystone any longer. So it just gets tougher and tougher. We just don't know if we can continue on long term under those circumstances.
Well, I'm Grant Humphreys. You've heard me speak on the video. So I'm the town founder of Carlton Landing. We're at Lake Eufaula. I understand some frustrations that people have with the Corps. However, my message today is not going to be jumping on the bandwagon and bashing the Corps. We've been working with them for 11 years. It took us a long time to get a new environmental impact study done at Lake Eufaula. We had to work through Senator Inhofe's office to get that done, like I said in the video. The biggest challenge for us in terms of development is understanding what are the regulatory requirements that the Corps has. What's that structure look like? And taking the time to go to school on NEPA and WRDA and every federal legislation that regulates what they can and can't do. In our experience, we have not found a draconian, subjective, punitive kind of application. It's been hard, it's taken a long time, it's taken us years, but we put together the EIS that was completed in 2013. We completed a lease in 2015, and since that time we've been having a very productive relationship with the local staff and working with the Tulsa office. So I know that's disappointing to hear for some of the people that haven't had that experience, that would love for me to, bang my fist on the table and say how horrible it's been the whole time. It's hard. You're dealing with a federal agency that has negotiated legislation that's 250 years old. So there's a lot of bureaucracy and there's a lot of red tape. And I think if you're going to deal with the Corps of Engineers, you just got to take the time to get your hands around it and have your eyes wide open and know what you're going to be dealing with and know that it's going to take a long time to work through that process. Mm-hmm. So.
Morning. Thanks for being here, by the way, everybody. My name is Bob Ryan, and I'm in charge of my family's project on the Keystone Lake, which is called Jellystone Park. We were invited to do this project. If we had known about all these barriers when we started the project, I doubt I would be sitting here today. It wasn't explained to us. It was very exciting to be here. The opportunity was amazing. But when you're standing in the middle of your $6 million investment, and a junior ranger stands there and threatens you that he can take your lease off of you because you moved the building 3 feet from where it was supposed to be because the electric company told us to move it, and he stands there and threatens to take away your entire lease, that's pretty scary. So that's been our experience. To agree with Mr. Grant sitting next to me, I don't want to have a Corps job. I mean, I don't think anybody in this room wants to have that job. We all know here as business people, you cannot please everybody all the time. But the communication has been terrible. The red tape, as Grant had mentioned, everybody else has mentioned, has been terrible. Again, if they would just lay out a map the process of getting the permission to do the Jellystone Park was fairly easy. But as soon as it got signed and as soon as we committed to it, all of a sudden, it was all these roadblocks. I mean, they came racing in there one day because we took apart some old campsites. I mean, they were nasty campsites that nobody would use in today's, 50-foot rigs and, all that stuff. And as soon as we started tearing stuff apart to rebuild it, it was a major catastrophe in their eyes. So, again, I agree with Grant, we're not here to bash them, but if we could get some better communication across the board and some consistency, I think that'd be a lot better for everybody. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dustin Huff. I'm one of the original developers of Cross Timbers on Skytook Lake. Ron and I did that project together. And I'm also one of the founding principals of Keystone Harbor. So we've done two projects, two startup projects with the Corps of Engineers. And I would agree with Grant. There have been good times working with those guys. We did the Keystone Harbor lease in about 6 months. From the time we started to the time we finished it. So during that process, they were very proactive. It was a good process, and the projects turned out well. I would say our biggest barrier right now would have to be communication. Whoops. At the end of the day, we're here to talk about public-private partnerships. Which are critical. The public demands access to good quality facilities at these lakes. They do. And we've reached the point, maybe different than what Grant's experiencing, whereby when key officials come in from DC, the Corps loves to show off these projects, as they should. They should be proud of what we've done at Skytook and what we've done at Keystone and what they're doing on Eufaula. But we are not invited any longer to some of those discussions, which to me is disappointing. When we talk about public-private partnerships, the meetings that we're having now are public-public. So CETA, our lease passes from the Corps of Engineers to CETA, Skytook Economic Development Authority, and then it passes to us, State Source. And really right now, the biggest issue is simply when we need to get something done, or if we want to propose something, we no longer can have any communication with the Corps. And again, I know that they do a great job in a number of areas. I understand recreation, as they will tell us, is not at the top of their priority list. I do understand that. But to us right now, it's communication, 100%.
We're going to move on to our next question. Seth, if you could maybe pass that microphone back down, we'll kind of do the same routine there. We're obviously in a beautiful facility right here. It's a wonderful location. There's been tremendous development on the lake here in recent years. So I do want to focus on some positive things. Name one positive attribute you see in the current process. One positive thing.
This event's a pretty positive move in the right direction. I would say on the local level, at least in my experience, at the state park, our marina's in a state park, the local staff has been pretty great there. I mean, we've worked pretty well with, our ranger is great, the park manager's been great. We have a wonderful relationship with them. And I don't know, maybe it should be on me that we haven't tried harder, but it seems like when we need to do some stuff, they've got a great attitude and all that, but then they always refer back to the same, that's above my pay grade, you can't get anything done above me. They won't do it. So it's like they have really sweet, nice personalities, but it seems like, boat ramp, hey, we got this giant hole in the boat ramp, and we're going to need to fix the boat ramp. And I'm like, well, can we fix the boat ramp? We can't afford to fix the boat ramp. Well, you're only charging $2 to launch. I've got other marines in Texas, State Park down there. The cheapest one I found is $10 to launch. Like, maybe fix the boat ramp and charge $4 to launch, or $6 to launch, or $10 to launch and have a good boat ramp. I was like, well, we'd love to do that. It's like, well, what do y'all need to do? Well, it's out of our hands are tied. So I think the staff on the ground are great, but I think there's a big communication barrier between even the state park staff and who's above them. Because when I'm supposed to go to them for stuff, and then they say, well, they're not doing anything. So positive is good attitude of local people at the park has been our experience. The workers, the rangers and stuff.
I would have to say it's kind of a twin-edged sword. One of the biggest positives of Skytook Lake is also the Army Corps of Engineers. They build a nice lake. They maintain a great lake. The problem is things are changing. If we want to do things the same way, I think they will be great going forward. But if you want to have public-private partnerships and you want to develop the infrastructure of, I don't know if our tourism is the right word. To me, it's entertainment. I don't go to Vegas for tourism. I go to Vegas for entertainment. Same reason I come to the lake. It's entertainment. If you're going to develop that entertainment quality of life in Oklahoma, you're going to have to change. Things have to change. We can't continue doing them the way we've done them for the last 50 years and think there will be a difference. What the Army Corps does, they do really well. They don't interact with private industry all that whoopee. They need to learn that there's got to be a little give and take. Everybody's got, private industry is here for one reason: make money. That's why people are here. You put in a development, Carlton Landing. You didn't do that for free, did you? You're planning on making a little bit of cash off the deal. I put in a house for entertainment for my family. But I don't know if there is a profit and loss statement for the Army Corps. I wouldn't want to see it, I don't think. But anyway, that's my opinion. I think the Army Corps does what they do really well. They don't interact with the private sector all that well.
Same question, positive attribute.
I would say when they put a local Corps Ranger at Broken Bow, that was helpful. I've been there 18 seasons, and up until a year and a half or so ago, we hadn't had anybody. So that did help, having someone to talk to. And we've also got, just having Chris Merrick in the tourism department. I think Chris Merrick hung the moon. She's just the best there is. And so we have a great relationship. And that is a big help. She responds to emails. She responds to phone calls. She's the best. And so whenever I need something, she's usually there to try to help us get it through.
Yeah, I would second a lot of that. On the local level, the accessibility of scheduling meetings and responsiveness to emails and things like that has been really great. Everyone wants to help, but just within the framework, most of the time it's not the answers that we're looking for.
You know, I'd say when I went to D.C. and testified before the Senate, the thing that I asked for at that time was some of what you heard today is, let's make it clear that people can understand what the regulatory framework is up front so that we can make a go, no-go decision or modify our project to try to work around the constraints that the Corps has. A lot of times, there are regulatory restrictions that have been in place that might involve other federal agencies. EPA might be involved. The tribes might be involved. There's other things that are in play. And if you know where the landmines are, you know that you can work around it. In response to that, you know, when we came back, there have been about 3 or 4 different public, they call them demonstration workshops or, you know, Corps Lake Development workshops similar to this, but put on by the Corps of Engineers. I went to one, I think it was at Port of Catoosa about a year ago. And the Corps staff's there and they present and they open it up. It's not going to get into the specifics of every project, but what it will do is give people an understanding of where the doorways are that they could get in, who they talk to in order to learn what they need to learn so they can make a decision and do their due diligence.
I think that's one of the hardest part is navigating the system, so to speak.
Yeah, because honestly, from the outside, if you come in and you think, hey, I've got federal property that's managed by the Corps of Engineers and I'm going to run this private enterprise as if I'm doing it on private property in my own municipality, your expectations are going to be off from the very beginning. It's challenging and you need to know where that is. And what I asked for when we were in DC is that they would appoint a liaison who would, their sole job would be to guide people on public-private partnerships, because they've said that they're committed to seeking and doing public-private partnerships. General Semonite said that day in Washington. He said, this is something we really want to see happen. What's holding us back? I said, well, your regulatory stack is this thick. The federal agencies that are involved are, locked in, and you're asking people to come in and understand that framework that, frankly, your local office staff does not even understand the framework completely. They have a general idea of it. When you get to the Tulsa district office or the Dallas regional office, the level of expertise in those niche issues gets greater. So it's a real challenge, but to their credit, they've started that process of creating some opportunities for people to do that, and I think it's a relationship that you have to build trust and some goodwill with.
I think that the most important thing is that the fact that the opportunity is here for us private investors. I mean, just the opportunity to come in here and do what we need to do to create all this economic growth in the state is unbelievable. But like Grant said again, it's the red tape. If they could understand, if we could get the Corps to maybe have some seminars of understanding the private sector, I understand they have the government regulations, I understand that they go by their book, but if we could, they never set up any meetings with us, they never set up any seminars or something like this where we can actually understand each other. How do we get through that red tape? How do we get through that stack? I have no clue.
I would say, from a positive perspective, I'd probably echo some of these guys. Typically, the lake managers, which are boots on the ground at the end of the day, those men and women are very positive to work for or work with. Preston Hunter was great. Greg Bershey here at SkyTook. At the end of the day, Cross Timbers Marina would not be here without those two guys, 100%. That process, they were positive. They helped walk us through the process, and they fought for the projects. Those guys and gals, they see the need. They want to see quality projects brought to their lake. No different than Willie Jeffries. Willie ran Keystone. No doubt we wouldn't be on Keystone without Willie. And so I would say you have, in every organization, you have different culture. Certainly the lake managers are, I would consider, more pro-development, and they want to see quality projects brought to their lakes. I can tell that. I mean, another positive is the Corps went through, they did some survey work. They found that Oologah and Keystone had more demand than the facilities that were there. And so at the time that we went through the Keystone project, that was proactive on the Corps' part to go determine which lakes are we underserving. Keystone was one. So our timing was good. The city of Manford came to us. They also wanted a quality project brought to their city limits. And so we developed, in that sense, we developed a great public-private partnership. That's the reason why that project from start to finish took 6 months, where most projects you're seeing now 2-3 years, and sometimes longer than that. So I would say that, and the last thing I would say is the colonels that come and go make a huge difference. And we have had very proactive, pro-development colonels. When when they are in place, good things happen, and you can get things done in a timely manner. That's a positive. But I would say on the same token, we've had colonels that are not as engaged. When you have that situation, it becomes more difficult to move through the process. So that would be it.
Kind of a follow-up question for you, Dustin, real quick, because obviously there's depending on kind of who's in charge as far as their level of passion for public-private development, but this is indication of a success story right here, even though it was a lot of hard work to get to this point.
Right.
But do you think the flywheel is just turning, but it's turning just slowly at this point? And then what do we do to get that flywheel moving?
Right. Well, I mean, so if we looked at the last colonel that was in place, I think a big part of the process is the colonels have to get to the projects and see the projects, and I think that they have to meet the players and the partners that are developing on their lakes. When you talk about getting the flight, the problem with the way that the system is set up from a colonel perspective is they're in for a short period of time, relatively short period of time, and then they move on. If the culture within the Tulsa district office is not pro-development, or at least pro-public-private partnership, then they're not motivated to encourage that colonel to go meet all of the developers, go meet the project managers, and when they come to visit the projects, they're very impressed, because they're coming from all over the country. When they see Cross Timbers, they're impressed, or Pier 51 or whatever, Carlton Landing. But to get the colonels engaged, to me, it really starts with the culture of the Tulsa District Office. And so if that team becomes a little bit more engaged, then I think you're going to see a lot of positives take place from a development perspective.
As Grant mentioned, I believe just a moment ago, maybe a point person within the agency seems to me would help a lot.
Yeah, at the time that we were doing SkyTook, John Roberts was the lead civilian, and John, we had a lot of long conversations with John, and John was pro-development. He just had to manage his team that was behind him, and then he also had to manage the colonels that were there in the office. And so colonels have a lot of people running at them and a lot of people that are in their ears. John was a leader that at the end of the day, he can put his name on some pretty quality projects at the end of the day. So, yeah.
We've touched on our next question, our next topic a little bit, so I want to bring it up again, but any one particular barrier to the process? We've talked about, the communication with the Corps and just the government red tape, but I want to make sure we're not leaving anything out. So are there any other barriers that you would like to see improved upon to help with development, the public-private partnership development?
For me, all I can really speak to is my experience, but I mean, in a state park, our lease is, we've got the marina in a state park, so we don't control any part of the park. And so one kind of barrier to future development for me specifically, I came in, did quite a few improvements day one, but then really I kind of slowed down on some of those improvements, specifically because I was in a park, and it's kind of like, you don't want to have the biggest house in a neighborhood. You don't want to over-improve your marina if the park's not improving alongside you. And so this is not necessarily related to the Corps. This is more of on, doing a specific marina in a park. If I've got, if I spend $2 million on my marina and have a beautiful new showroom and service center, I've got a restaurant with nice bathrooms, but then the park bathrooms are still super duper subpar. The playground equipment's not fixed up, or there's problems there. Well, now everybody just, everybody in the park's coming using my restaurant restrooms instead of using the park restrooms. So I think a lot of it is, which I think a lot of some of the discussions were coming up here already with Gino having discussions, were having a unified improvement plan. Hey, if the marina guy is going to spend $2 million here, maybe the park needs to spend $2 million here. If we're going to add more wet slips, we need to add more cabins, and making sure the private company is doing it, kind of alongside the public company, because I can make my park look beautiful and my marina look beautiful. If the park looks like junk, well, my marina is not going to be successful. Vice versa, you guys need to make sure you're in bed with a marina operator. You guys are spending $2 or $3 million in improving the park, did a beautiful facility, and then your marina guy, hadn't power washed the boat docks in a year. You need to get a better private partner. So I would just make sure, I think the barrier that I've seen is that the improvement to the park is not as much as what I am, and so then it holds back. I'm like, well, I've got other projects I can put money in. I'll just let this be a subpar or a B project because I'm next to a B park. If I get an A park, I'm going to do A work.
When you see that public commitment and publicly they see the private commitment, and you can feel a lot more comfortable, both of you moving forward in that direction you want to go.
Absolutely, and the more people that are coming to the state park, or more boat rentals that I can do, or more people eat at my restaurant. Well, if I've got boat rentals and a nice restaurant, more people are going to come to the park. So it's the two working together. If I put a bunch of brand new boats out here and I've got a bunch of substandard park, my boat rentals aren't going to be successful. You know, if
So
you
the
got-
teamwork aspect of it.
I think making sure that the financial commitment is there, and if the park doesn't want to do it, maybe that's where these partnerships. Hey, I'll put the money into the park side, but then I've got to make sure I'm compensated on the back end, because like a couple guys have said, it, you know, for me it's all cash flow, right? I mean, I'm an investor at the end of the day. I love marinas. That's a lifestyle type deal, but I don't do it for free. And so I've got to make sure I get a return on investment, whether, you know, if the state knows they want it done, but they don't have the capital, if they don't have money in the budget for a capital improvement, well, I'll put the capital improvement up as long as I'm getting an ROI first, and then, you know, later on pay additional money. So, you know, reduction in leases for a certain period of times, whatever we need to do. But, I mean, I think the summit's fantastic, so I'm glad we're talking about it.
I guess I'm not a business owner. I'm a homeowner, vacation home or something that I don't. So probably communicate. I think we're all on the same page. We all really want the same thing. And if we can communicate, get some of the, everybody looking at things a little bit different through the other person's shoes. I'm sure I've got some qualities in dealing with me that maybe they don't like either, but I just think we got to communicate, get on the same page. We all want Oklahoma to improve.
I would say communication is a big issue with just all the different levels and different layers of state and federal agencies. Some of this, they might agree with me on this, but I do think that some of the guys, especially on the federal level, are not very ambitious, if that's the right terminology to use. Most people in business they're entrepreneurial and they're pretty dang ambitious. I compare it. I played quarterback in football, and I can kind of compare it to sports. You got a team and you're trying to do well, and a lot of the guys that you deal with, especially on the federal level, are just not very ambitious. There's probably a better word than that, but
I would say recreation is in the mission for the Corps and those other agencies, but what we've been told, as again we operate on the Arkansas River, is that river recreation does not fall into that category. It's only lake recreation, which is not great. And I think that they need to start, especially in the Tulsa area, to think about just thinking about that differently. With all the development, with the gathering place on the river, we're building a $45 million low water dam and a whitewater park in Tulsa. They just need to think about making river recreation more of a priority. And maybe GRDA has been one of our great partners, and maybe Dan Sullivan's helping lead that conversation with their development that they're doing in eastern Oklahoma that's going to have some whitewater features. But that'd be one thing that I would hope to see changed in the future, that the river gets put a little higher on the priority list.
Okay, the question, again, Greg, just...
Well, we've talked about some of the barriers, you
Yeah.
know, the communication and, you know, just the red tape and getting things done. I just want to make sure we're not overlooking any other barrier that isn't top of mind for me or for anybody right now
Gotcha.
that
Yeah, so-
boil down to specifics.
And I know no one here is with the Corps, is that right? Is anyone here with the Corps of Engineers? What's that? Retired. There you go, all right. Well, I would hope that the Corps gets a copy of the whole video. I know there's some recording, but I'd hope that the Corps gets a copy of what's said today so that they have an opportunity to hear our comments. I called the Eufaula Lake office on the way here to see if they were coming, and they said no, they hadn't heard about it. Whether that didn't get to them through Tulsa or what, I don't know. But, you know, communication's been mentioned. I would say that with any relationship, I don't care if you're talking about a private business partnership, you're talking about your own marriage, you're talking about your next door neighbor, communication matters. Trust needs to be built and protected. And so as you see that long-term perspective on the relationship, and you honor them and seek that they honor you, I think that that can go a long ways. Ask permission before you do something. Ask permission instead of forgiveness. If you ask forgiveness with the Corps, you're going to be persona non grata for the rest of your life. They are not motivated by time or logic or money. And so you need to understand that their regulatory structure is that they do what is directed in their restrictions, and they enforce it dogmatically. So if you want to see recreation applied to rivers, what you need to do is next time the Water Resource Development Act gets passed, which will be 2020, I believe, you've got to slip in a sentence there that says the Tulsa River shall be recreation as a primary use. You know, if you get the sentence added into the WRDA bill, then it'll change the way that they operate. That means that there's politics involved, and we all know that that takes time, and it takes a lot of fortitude to get through that process. Senator Inhofe's office was really instrumental for us in getting it done. We would not, like I said in the testimony in D.C., we wouldn't have been able to get through the process had Senator Inhofe's office not intervened. He was really instrumental in getting the colonel out onto Carlton Landing, which he hadn't been there on site yet. And then after that happened, in short order, we were able to get the EIS pushed through. So working through the political process is important. I'd say the relationships are important at the local, like the developer to the public level. In a public-private partnership, there has to be a public face. In our case, it's Carlton Landing, which is the town that I founded, and so we're very, very tightly knit with our public partner. However, you know, if you're dealing with the County Economic Development Trust, that's a board or a commission that rotates, and so you've got to maintain relationships with those commissioners and keep that relationship strong, making sure that they also are maintaining a strong relationship with the Corps. And that's challenging, and it requires investment of time and energy. One other thing I just throw out, there are things that catch you from your blind side if you're not careful. For instance, like we've got 2 endangered species that impact our lease premises, the American burrowing beetle and the long-eared bat. And so I've got to schedule my construction activity so I don't impact the mating season of the long-eared bat. So there's a window of time each year that we can get projects done. Well, who takes that into consideration? I mean, that's not a normal thing that you have in a real estate project, but it is something that you run into if you're talking about federal lands with environmental impacts that are not typical for a typical real estate development. One last comment, then I'll hand the mic. The Corps, because they operate things without a lot of discretion, they do exactly what the regulations tell them to do. Sometimes you have to be creative in how you're asking the question. For instance, one time we wanted to do a pier. It was going to be a dock and like a gazebo that would be on the lake, on private property, but over the flowage easement. But the shoreline management plan was zoned fish and wildlife protection. And we'd asked for 2 years, and to the comment earlier, the Corps knows 800 ways to say no. And so we'd heard no in every language. Well, we went in, and the colonel was out there, and we said, you know, we've asked for this gazebo and dock. And they go, yes. We know that you can't approve that. And they go, that's right. I go, we're not asking for a gazebo and a dock. What we're asking for is a fishing pier and wildlife observation platform. And they said, oh, well, we can approve that. And so there's ways, if you can be creative in what you're requesting, understanding that they are constrained by their regulations, and finding ways to creatively work through that system, you might be able to get the outcome that you want.
Well, once again, talking about the colonel, I believe Willie, 3 years is what they're here for, 3 years? Yes. All right, so they're in by the time they get their feet wet and they understand the area, they're out again. It's, and that's not good for us. It really isn't. I've met one colonel one time down in Manford. We had a luncheon at Freddy's Steakhouse. And his whole comment the whole time was, we're here to save lives and to save property. So I said to him, okay, you built the lake to save lives and save property. I understand that. What was the capacity of the lake when you built it? Nobody wants to tell us what the capacity was. It's been, I believe the lake is 60 years old now, whatever, and close enough. What's the capacity today? Nobody will tell us. So I say, as an outsider, I say, okay, if you built the lake to maintain property and maintain lives, why aren't you maintaining the lake? Nobody gives me an answer. The colonel wouldn't give me an answer. No one since has given me an answer. That's just my question to everybody, is why aren't they maintaining the lake levels, and why are we getting these devastating floods, which is hurting everybody? That's my only comment for communication. There's no answers. They won't give you an answer.
I would say, I know we've pounded communication, so I would say that anytime we work on the private side, timelines, budgets, they matter. You mentioned time they don't factor that in. If you're looking to do a project on a Corps of Engineers lake, you, at least presently, you're not going to get a very detailed timeline. You're certainly not going to get a very detailed process, so you're going to have to zig and zag through it. So even if you take communication out, even if communication is okay, they're not going to tell you how long it's going to take to review something. It's going to go through multiple departments, which we understand on the private side. I mean, we understand that there is a process, but there's not going to be anything detailed on it. The other thing that has been mentioned that is something that we didn't deal with, but I'm hearing is a possibility, is that the Corps may start charging a fee to review a potential development plan. And so when we talk about additional barriers, you're looking at private investors that now have to factor in the risk of the project, that now have to factor in the risk of the time and now expense of just having a project reviewed with absolutely no guarantee that it's going to be approved. So when you start looking at those elements and you're a private investor, you start going, well, there's probably other routes that are a little easier for me to go make a return on my capital. And that's disappointing. And those are some of the things that I think we all understand there's going to be a process. What we ask is, can we just outline the process detailed with some sort of timeline associated with it? And at the end of the day, we're all paying their salaries. And so the fact that we're talking about now an additional fee, and we're not talking 3 figures, we're talking 5 figures to maybe 6 figures. And so significant risk capital ahead of even thinking about doing a project. So those are barriers, at least, that have come across our desk that concern us. So.
Okay, we're gonna open it up for, we've got time for one question for the audience. And I do want to say that this is all about getting ideas out on the table and a healthy discussion. And I do want to give the Corps of Engineers a lot of credit for managing our historic flooding, because, I mean, it was unprecedented. And I don't want everybody to get the impression that this is all everybody against the Corps, because they did a wonderful job and saved a lot of lives. And so we can't forget that. But this is all about just trying to figure out how to move that public-private partnership forward and how to do it in a timely manner to where it serves the public and serves the business interests that are involved as well. But the Corps did an excellent job in handling unprecedented rainfall and flooding, I feel like, as an outsider looking in, but a somewhat informed outsider. Okay, we got a question right back here.
Yeah, hi. I'm the other half of the Yogi Bear project on Keystone Lake. And from listening to all of the panelists up there, it seems that every person sitting there has a separate relationship with a different agency, where the Corps has made their land lease with an agency, or the city of Manford in our case, and then we are the sublease person. So I think that also is problematic in the direct relationship to the Corps. because anytime we have to request something, we have to go to the city of Manford. The city of Manford has to fit it into their schedule to contact the Corps, and then you lose stuff in translation too, I think, because you're not communicating directly with them. There's a barrier between us. So that could be a hindrance in some cases to some of the development of these projects. And then for the fellow that has the Marina Pier 51, sounds like to me that he has to deal with the state of Oklahoma, because I think that is a state park over there. So he has another issue that he's dealing with as well. So I guess in the communication sense, you have these state agencies that you're dealing with as a buffer between yourself and the Corps. So there can be some maybe problems there with the relationships and getting communication properly channeled across the sea there.
So there are some hurdles to go through, is kind of what I gather as well. You have to jump over this hurdle and jump over another hurdle, and it's not real streamlined at times. Is that the?
I think I just jumped a hurdle. Did she say publicly that she was listening to me?
You reached a really good goal there. But just open that up. Do you think there are too many hurdles? How do we get rid of some of those hurdles? How do we streamline some of that process?
Craig, can I comment on that real quick?
Sure.
So my name's William Jeffries. I'm retired with the Corps of Engineers. I also run the regulatory program for the Corps of Engineers, and I've worked in Nashville District, Tulsa District, Kansas City districts and stuff. But what we need to do as a state is develop this shared vision, and that's what we've done. We say we want to be the top 10 in recreation and tourism. But how do we get there? Communication is a big problem. But what we need to do for the Corps, we need to get our senior leaders, our governor, our legislators, to set some reasonable expectations for the Corps. Change cannot happen at the district level. It can't happen at the division level. There's verbiage in WRDA that requires the Corps to streamline their processes. It's something I tried to do before I retired, bringing tools from the regulatory program. Keep in mind, with the Clean Water Act, they process thousands of developmental actions every single year. They do it through general permits, and they have these special conditions, general conditions, that basically state if you follow these conditions, your project's already authorized. And now, therefore, smaller, bridge projects, road projects, things with less environmental impact, which applies to a lot of recreational development that we're doing. But I think a way forward for the state of Oklahoma is to develop a working relationship with the Corps, but also to build in these reasonable expectations that Corps, you're public servants. That was always driven home to me my whole career, whether it's through the military or through the Corps of Engineers. I've always been a public servant. And they always tell you, remember who you work for. So I've worked with developers over the years on the regulatory side, the operations side, and I hear you guys. But the Corps doesn't, there's no we don't expect change. We take what they give us. As a lake manager, it was very frustrating that you want to do development, you want to partner with people, but your hands are tied. It's time, I think, as a nation, and especially as a state, that we evolve, and that we learn from history, but we develop strategies to streamline processes. There's tools out there. The Corps already has some streamlined processes. Let's bring those tools over from the regulatory side to the operations side. How do we do that? It's through our leaders, through our legislators, but it's all through us as a group. We need to learn to network, and we need to expect the Corps, our government, to lessen the burden on the regulated public. We can do it. This is a great opportunity right here for everybody across the state of Oklahoma to start networking, share information, success stories like Mr. Humphreys did. It's a tedious process, but it doesn't have to be. You should be assigned one door to the Corps. I don't care if you're a prime leasee, a sub-leasee. Communication, we know it's a problem. Let's fix it. Let's work with the state, support our state staff and develop this working relationship with the Corps of Engineers at the headquarters level. I mean, the district, whoops, I don't know who I am now. The district, they can't change. It doesn't, they're not set up like that. That's not how our government works. But I don't want everyone, I mean, the process is frustrating, but there is a way forward. We as a state can get there. We need to set these expectations with the government's office or the governor's staff. And instead of complaining, let's provide answers, let's provide solutions. But we got to have a voice. And that's what our legislators
Just in response to that, what you're talking about of saying, you know, have that liaison, but have it come from at the state level. I think that would be huge. It could be someone like yourself, someone like John Roberts, someone that knows the Corps from the inside out and is available then to be a connecting point, a liaison to the public side of every public-private partnership. Because you've got a private developer. We all speak businessese. We know how that works. You've got your local public entity who honestly sees dealing with the Corps like a cow looking at a new gate. They just don't know how to approach it. You know, it's just not something that they've done in the past. And they do add value in that as a public entity, they provide assurance of the common good and a high level of accountability. You know, that's the intent of the public side of a public-private partnership. And they allow the Corps to deal with them as a public-to-public relationship, which is free of a lot of the bid and competition requirements as the Corps tries to deal with private side directly. That's why you don't see that. But that public side does not have the ability to add value in terms of streamlining the process or giving valuable consulting to the client. So if one of those positions was created, funded at the state level, and they could get involved with all of these P3 activities that are going on, I think they'd add a lot of value.
Great perspective, and we appreciate that input to the conversation. We're running a little bit behind, so I'm going to try to keep us on schedule to move to the next panel discussion group. So, gentlemen, thank you very much. We appreciate your insight.